Welcome to my show, simply entitled Women Influencers. I am Veronica Malolos, CCIM, founder and CEO of Capstack Commercial, a commercial real estate company serving the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Beth Azor, otherwise known as the Canvassing Queen. Beth currently owns $80 million in shopping center assets. She's a coach and an advocate for women owning real estate, and she has one of the most captivating stories you can imagine. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast. Hello, Beth. I'm so happy you're here today. I mean, considering the fact that we've just gone through such a hurricane, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I hope you're safe. I'm so happy to be here, Veronica. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, considering the fact that you were such an influencer on women, I think this is such a special episode for me. So let's start with your story, if you don't mind. Tell us about how you grew up in your environment and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I'm a cheesehead. And my parents were entrepreneurs. They owned a restaurant. And so I was working at a very early age, doing all kinds of odds and ends with the restaurant and bar and tavern in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. When you work for parents that are entrepreneurs, you're expected to be part of the team.
Especially for the restaurant business. My goodness, that's a tough business to be in.
Yes. And so the work ethic started very early. My dad got his real estate license, I think, when I was 12 in Wisconsin. And they moved us to Florida. So we moved to Florida from Wisconsin. So I was in ninth grade, the end of my freshman year. And that changed a lot because when I was in high school in Wisconsin, I was one of maybe 400 kids in a class. And when we moved to Florida, we moved to a small town between Daytona and St. Augustine called Flagler Beach. And we had the high school and middle school were together. And from the 7th grade to the 12th grade, I don't think there were 400 kids in that whole school. So everyone did everything. So I was a cheerleader. I was the editor of the school newspaper. I played softball. So you just did everything. And by getting involved in doing everything and participating in everything, that really kind of brought me out of my shell. And I think it was life-changing. And so when I was in Wisconsin, no one ever talked about college. But when I got to Florida, everyone talked about college. So I remember coming home as a freshman saying, Florida State or Florida, I have to pick. I'm going to go to college. So awesome. It was a phenomenal environment. I ended up going to Florida State. I wanted to be a Gator, but they reached out and said, you're accepted, but you have to come during the summer. And then the next day I got a letter from Florida State saying, you're accepted. We'll see you in the fall. I'm like, oh, I'll see Florida State in the fall because I want to have fun my last summer. How easy I made that decision. But so I'm a big Seminole, and college life was great. I was an RA in my dorm my sophomore year. I joined a sorority my junior year. And at the time, who became my husband, he was in a fraternity. So he and I convinced our parents that we would be way better in the marketplace to get a job if we stayed a fifth year and got our second major. But we were staying to have fun and have a good time. But sure. And just getting involved on campus through the Greek life, again, was very instrumental in me in leadership skills, in selling skills. So that's that. I followed the boy down to Miami. We got married. I wanted, Veronica, one day, my goal in life, I told my parents, I'm never getting into real estate. I can't believe you guys do this for a living. They were in residential and they got calls in the middle of the night about air conditioners, I said, I would never do this. I wanted to run the Olympics one day.
Wow.
And so I got a degree in English literature and communications with a minor in public relations. So I got a job out of college as a special events coordinator in Miami for a not-for-profit and loved my job, but I was only making $11,000 a year, which in today's numbers is probably 30. So guess what I did? Since I had my license since I was 18, because that's what you do when your parents are in real estate, I did real estate on the weekends. So for 2 years straight after graduation, I worked at a job I loved during the week, making no money, and then did real estate on the weekends, making great money. And after 2 years, the executive director of the not-for-profit calls me into her office and she said, "We love you, but your ambition exceeds us. You should probably just volunteer for us and be on the board of directors and go do this real estate thing full time." And God bless her, because that was really good advice. And I ended up doing that. And that's how I eventually got into commercial real estate, and the rest is history.
And you got into commercial real estate. Why? I mean, your parents were in residential real estate. How did you?
Yeah. So I went to my weekend job, which was sitting model homes for a residential developer. And I hated it, because I went from working 7 days a week, and now I'm sitting in a trailer. Like during the weekends when I worked there, it was busy. So I liked it. But now I'm working, 3 weekdays, and no one was coming into the trailer. I'm reading People magazines, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But one Mother's Day weekend, a young woman who came in to help out, and her real job during the week was a leasing agent for a shopping center developer.
Oh.
She said, you need to do what I do. And I go, well, what's that? And she goes, developers build grocery store anchored shopping centers, and we put in tenants around them, and we help people achieve their American dream. I said, sold. Where do I sign up for that? And she said, well, there's a company in Miami called Terra Nova, and they train agents. Call down there. So I called there, and the woman, I said, who's in charge of your training program? And they told me Donna Abood, who was a sorority sister of mine at Florida State.
Wow. Look at that.
And she said, you're hired. Just come meet the boss.
Oh, that's amazing. And just for context, what year was that when you worked?
1986.
Wow.
So I'm going on my 38th year in the business.
Yes. And you are called.
And I started when I was 10.
And of course, you're known as the canvassing queen, and everybody knows who Beth Azor is. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But I wanted to ask you, through all of that, and I know you're a very positive person, is there a challenge that comes to mind that you overcame that made such an impact on your future or your today?
So early on in 86, Veronica, there were very, very, very few women in the industry. And unfortunately, the women that were in the industry were not very friendly. And I don't hold that against them, because I understand that they were worried that if there was 10 seats at a table and there was one woman, they were worried if another woman came in to sit at the table that they'd get replaced. It wasn't all welcoming like it is now. Correct. So I believe that, and I faced those challenges early, and because of that, I became very inclusive of women. And anytime I could help a young woman, I went out of my way to do it, because I know how icky it felt when I wasn't welcomed with open arms. And I just believed we are smart and capable and ambitious, and we can push through this, and there can be more women.
Right.
And I did that in the industry, in our journeys as associates. And now, 30 years later, I'm doing it for investing, because I have found, and we'll get to that, I know, but I've come full circle to where I look around and I see all of these great women in our industry, amazing, but I don't see them at when I'm going to get a loan for a property, and I ask my lender, how many women have you done loans with for commercial property? And they say none. So I'm back to square one on that, but I'm going to do what I did where I help women get into the business. Now I'm going to help women get into investing.
That's amazing how you've taken a challenge like that, like very limited space for women at that time in the 80s. And because of your positive spirit, you've actually overcome that and then eventually come full circle to help others, not just in real estate, but in generating wealth through commercial real estate. I love that. So let's talk about influence. And you know that the title of this show is Women Influencers. And surely you are an influencer to women, especially to somebody like me. But tell me a little bit about the one thing or one outcome that you're most proud of that you had a direct influence on.
There's so many. I we trained a lot. I brought in people. It's very hard to get into the commercial real estate industry.
It
And
is.
so I was a huge proponent. Anytime we hired someone from like a CB or a JLL or like one of these bigger brokerage firms, it just never was smooth. And I talked my boss, who eventually became my partner. I said, I think we should just have a training program and we should hire kids right out of college and train them to do what I do and grow our teams that way. So when I am at shopping center conferences, throughout the year, I'm constantly running into people that, one guy worked at a gym, another guy worked at a bowling alley, another guy worked at his dad's used car lot, and one guy was a greenskeeper at a golf course, but one guy was the teacher of the year for Miami.
Wow.
And I found these people, these guys and gals, and we created a program where we could teach them. And now all of those people that I just mentioned are in very large positions, significant positions in our industry. So I feel that because before that, even though I joined Terra Nova and they had a training program, I took it to a different level. And I think that I have alumni of my training programs around the country. So I think I helped impact the industry because even today, people call me. I was on the phone call with a young man yesterday, and he's like, it's impossible to get into your industry. Because now even though I coach and train for companies, they don't hire newbies. It's super hard to get in our business. So I wish there were more companies that did what we did and just took on, we would take 4 kids on, and I knew 2 would make it. 1 would be iffy and 1 would not make it. But it was very time consuming and it was very expensive. So I understand why companies don't do it. But I think that when I look back on my career, I think that that's where I've had the most influence because I've taken people that were not in our industry and now they're in prominent positions. And I am very proud of that.
Well, and you should be, because I remember being at ICSC, which used to be called the International Council of Shopping Centers, for those who are listening in who are not familiar with it. And I remember people on the panel mentioning Beth Azor because they took your training program. So it's really quite incredible. And of course, I agree that your influence did not just belong to the people that you've personally trained, but in fact, you have impacted the industry. So thank you for all you've done for our industry. I wanted to ask you, if you had one piece of advice to our audience, what would that be?
My biggest piece of advice is to follow your instincts, especially to women that are paying, and men that are paying attention to or watching the show. Instinct comes from your wisdom and your experience, and the wisdom that comes from your experience. And I think that some people think it sounds like that's just a soft skill or that's granola but the times that I have not followed my instinct, it has not been good. And so I now follow it. I do my research. If it's like a property I'm thinking about buying and I believe in it, I used to call other people and say, what do you think? I'm thinking about buying this deal. And they'd talk me out of it. And then a year later, someone else buys it and does what I had planned to do with it. And I let these people talk me out of it. So now if it has to do with an investment, if I think it's a good investment, I put it under contract. I do my due diligence. I cross my T's and dot my I's, and then I move forward, or I don't, but I do it all on me. I'm not looking anymore for someone to co-sign my ideas. So I think it's important that men pay attention to their instincts, because I don't think they do. And women who sometimes are talked out of paying attention to their instincts, they should double down. So That's my advice. Follow your instincts. It comes from your wisdom, from your experience. It's not some granola thing. It's coming from something that has happened before that you've experienced. Listen to it.
Oh, I love that, Beth. I surely love that. I think we've come to, and this is a good segue because you're going to ask me a question next, and let's get into that right now. Then,
So I wanted to, I'm on this mission to get more women to invest. So tell me about your investing experiences.
well, and I've shared this with you already, just a little bit here and there, but never really got to tell that story. And what it is that I had a leasing assignment from my own family because we had purchased a franchise for a wellness spa, Jay Sterling's Wellness Spa. And my assignment was to go and find space for our spa, and found out that either way, or any, even if it's a new construction or maybe a an older space, the build out was going to cost us about $500,000.
Wow.
Then we went, and then I went to your summit, the Women's Investment Summit in South Florida. And I was watching and listening to all the women that you had invited on the stage. And I thought to myself, my goodness, if they can do it, we can do it too. And certainly got so inspired by you, Beth. And I kid you not, the day after I returned from your investment summit, I gathered my sisters, who were my partners in the franchise, and I said, hey, guess what? We're buying a building. And they were all like, what? What are you talking about? And I said, don't worry, we're going to do it. I mean, at that point, of course, I'm in the industry. I kind of know how it works, but never really did it with them here in Florida. And lo and behold, a few months later, we closed on our first building. And let me tell you that if not for that summit, and I don't, this is not BS. If not for that summit, I would not have opened my mind to the possibility that we could own a building for a franchise. And you know what? We're going to wash, rinse, and repeat, because we did it SBA, and we got a nice enough size building to where I get to lease 40% of the building. And if all goes well, after a year, SBA already told us you could open your next franchise. So we're on our way, and we're like super excited. And that being said, I wanted to ask you if someone in our audience is interested in all of this information and in your next summit. Tell us a little bit about when that will be and how to register for it.
Yes. Well, our fifth annual, I can't believe it's already the fifth one, is going to be in March 13th and 14th, 2025 in South Florida, Dania Beach, which is the hotel is a mile from the Fort Lauderdale airport, very convenient. And it's 2 days, and it's going to follow the same pattern as the ones you've attended, where I bring women on the stage who have invested so you can hear their stories, because it's exactly the point, exactly what you said. Women sit in the audience and they hear someone's story and they see the age of the person or the lack of experience or sophistication, and they say, if they can do it, I can too. And that's what we want. And we're just regular people buying real estate. And I find that women they just are not thinking. They're thinking, oh, we'll just go lease, like for your business, right? So we do that. And then if you're interested in a certain asset class, those women that I've interviewed go into breakout rooms, and you can do a deeper dive with them where they can literally show you an underwriting of how they found the building, how they did the projections, did they get a loan, did they raise money? So it's a very deeper dive on asset class specifics. And then the next day in the afternoon, I put about 50 women of the 250 that come. They sign up for the bus tour, and we go drive around my properties. I show the before and afters. And then maybe last year, we also went to Natasha's multifamily properties that I've invested in with her as a limited partner. And it's just a phenomenal 2 days. And besides all of that education and inspiration and content, and I hope you agree, the women that attend are the most generous, welcoming, smart, inspiring women. So it's just a great time over 2 days. So if anyone's interested, please join us. We have 40 tickets left.
Oh, and you can be found online.
The sign up for the summit is at azoracademy.com.
Perfect. And talk about generous women. Let me tell you, for the audience, that about a week or so before we closed, I called Beth and I called Natasha, both who are of course the main people that are on her summit. And the wisdom that I received and the guidance that I received is just invaluable. And I'm so grateful to you, Beth, for that. And here we are. I mean, we're almost, our building is almost done, and I'm just super excited. We're going to visit it next week. Thank God it wasn't impacted by the hurricane. But yeah, so we're just super grateful. Before we go, Beth, do you have some parting words for our audience?
I think the following your instinct, educating yourself, right? We get to our ages and we think we've learned everything. We've learned it. Like, I've been doing this for 38 years. What do I need to learn? But I'm constantly attending. I was in California 2 weeks ago attending an investment conference, which was 95% men and very few women, as you know. And I'm constantly learning. We should all be learning, because if we stop learning, we're going to coast. Mm-hmm. And coasting goes in the wrong direction. So we should constantly be challenging ourselves, whether it's with AI, investing, meeting new people, learning about new markets. So that's push yourself, because that's what fulfills us, is pushing ourselves and speaking with your friends and learning what they're doing, because they might be doing something that you want to do. So do that. Push yourself.
Yes. And I learned something. You were also a speaker in C5 plus CCIM conference in South Florida. And you said to the audience, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And I can never forget that. Let me tell you, Beth, you are such a giving person to the industry. I appreciate you. So many people appreciate you. And thank you for being here on our podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Veronica.
Mwah. Take care.